Hi, this is Sloof at the VMworld 2014 and I'm joined by two famous authors, Duncan Epping and Cormac Hogan. They have written this book, Essential VSAN Guide. Is it a guide?
I would more say that it's an all-round book. It's not necessarily a guide when it comes to how to deploy it, but it contains a lot of different topics as well.
Okay, so you guys wrote this book, it's awesome. If people buy this book, what are the main takeaway values, Cormac?
Oh well, first off it'll get them started with vSAN, and it is pretty simple to get started with it, but it goes through a lot of things like the policy-based management, which is probably quite new to a lot of people. So it's just really taking them step by step how to get vSAN deployed in their environment. Yeah.
Right. So, and if people are going to deploy vSAN, it's fairly easy. It's one box that must be marked, from what I've understood.
Yeah, it's fairly easy to set up vSAN by itself. So if you look at the clustering aspect of vSAN, it's just one tick box. So you're probably wondering why is the book this thick, right? When it's only one tick box. The thing is, there's a lot of other moving parts as well. You need to set up the networking. There's some requirements around that. So there's various things from a networking aspect that we'll need to do. But of course, there's also the performance aspect. So there's a lot of things you need to take into consideration. Although it's a very simple product, there's going to be a multitude in terms of how to handle the design and how to handle certain failure scenarios. So that's the reason that we decided to write the book in the first place.
Right. When I talk to people about vSAN and they discover that it's based on local storage, they immediately start, what happens if a host falls down? Can you tell me about things like resiliency and redundancy, Cormac?
Yeah, sure. Well, it works completely with vSphere HA. So in the event of a host failure, you have HA restarting the VMs on the remaining hosts in the cluster. So from that aspect, it's fully highly available. But the other thing as well is, going back to the policies we mentioned earlier, you can define a policy on a per VM or a per VM decay basis, so that your VM decays, your virtual machine storage, is mirrored across 2 or more hosts. You can go up to 3 host failures, tolerate 3 host failures, and still have a running virtual machine if that's what you put in the policy.
Okay, so the machine is actually mirrored or copied on storage. So the policies you're talking about, normally when I attach a SAN with VASA and VI, then I see the new policies pop up. But when I use vSAN, does the same happen? Does it align to the method people are already using?
Well, if you look at the current implementation of what we call storage policy-based management, so VASA is one of those, is part of that. What you will see with vSAN, that it's slightly different. So I would like to say that's version 1.5 of the implementation. If you look at vSAN, so in the past what you would see is you see some of the basic characteristics of a data store, but with vSAN it's slightly different. So the characteristics aren't really tied to the data store itself, but you have a policy where you can specify certain characteristics for virtual machines. So for instance, as Cormac already alluded to, you can specify the numbers of failures you can tolerate for availability purposes. But on top of that, there's also some of the performance aspects. So for instance, you could specify what the percentage of read cache will need to be for your virtual machines. And you can tie that policy to multiple virtual machines or one virtual machines, whichever you prefer.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So what's a typical use case for vSAN? Can I use it for a view environment, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is storage at the end of the day, so you can use it for pretty much anything. But we are looking at use cases like View. It's now working with the latest release of View 6. So each of the desktops that make up, or each of the components that make up a desktop, can have its own separate policy as well. But View is just one use case. You could have it as a management cluster or a DR scenario. So uses are multiple.
Okay. How is the adoption in the market? Are people already using it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually asked a question to our engineering team and to our PM team as well, and it seems that the adoption is really ramping up. A lot of people are really interested about the concepts. I think they've already seen a lot of our partners doing the same thing, right? There's a couple of partners doing something similar in this space. Now, vSAN is truly unique because they actually sit within the hypervisor instead of sitting on top of it.
Right, it's a part of the kernel is what you mean.
It is part of the kernel indeed, and I think that's a big differentiator between vSAN and some of our competitors out there. But if you look at what customers are doing, yeah, surely in the case of View, a lot of people are interested in it because it makes it really easy to deploy View, but also test dev environments. We're even seeing customers doing it, with their production environment. So they're just throwing all of the workloads on top of vSAN, and it seems to be working really well.
Do you agree that one of the biggest success factors will be scalability?
Well, we can go to 32 nodes already. So when the product GA'd, we were up to 32 nodes. So we can have 32 hosts all contributing storage to that cluster. So you have this really large vSAN data store where you can deploy your virtual machines. And I don't think we're going to stop there.
So, but what I meant is that people can start small with only 3 nodes, and later on they can add extra nodes up to 32, and they're linear in both storage performance and CPU and memory performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're quite right, Eric. That's exactly, you can start off really small and just build out and add hosts into the cluster. And it is just as simple as putting a host into a cluster. There's nothing else you need to do. Once the networking is set up, vSAN will automatically claim the disks for you, expand out that data store, and you're good to go.
Okay, sounds awesome. Guys, many thanks for the interview, and I can recommend buy this book because it contains a lot of valuable information. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks for your time, Eric.